Hey guys, so this review is a review that we've already done, but since it's been 2 weeks since the last time we went over a commandment, we're just going to go over it again. Does anyone remember the last one that we did?
You must not murder.
You must not murder. Okay, good. Does anyone remember the 3 steps to murder?
Oh, thought.
Yes.
Action. No,
No.
thought.
Speaking.
Speaking.
Action. Okay. So yeah, when we when we think of sin, when we think of killing someone, in God's eyes, that is killing someone. And I know like this was one of the hardest parts to understand the last time when we went over it, but we have to understand that we're talking about in God's eyes, not in people's eyes. If you think about killing someone and nobody knows, nobody's going to consider that you killed someone. But in God's eyes, you've already killed someone. So that's the first part of that sin. So sin in general starts in the mind, so we have to be wary of what we think and what our thoughts are. And also when we allow the thoughts to linger in our mind, when we allow them to grow, they grow and they become our death. They become what leads us to death. So we have to make sure that when these ideas come into our mind, to be conscious of it and to act to quickly get rid of it. Because if we let it stay, it grows and then it just becomes very difficult to get rid of. So the second one was words. And we went over this example where there was a prophet named Balaam. And Balaam was a man whose words were important, so important in fact that one of the enemies of Israel called him over to ask him to curse the Israelites. Because as the Israelites were coming to their promised land, they were defeating their enemies along the way. And this one kingdom just happened to be one of their enemies. And because they were so scared of them, they called on this man Balaam, whose words were so powerful that if he cursed anyone, those people would truly be cursed. So as he traveled and as he was asked to do this, God spoke to Balaam and said, don't curse these people, for they are blessed. Because God didn't just care about the act of killing, he cared about his words. Like he cared about the actual words that was to come out of his mouth. And that goes for us too. He cares about the word, God cares about the words that come out of our mouth, because they have power. They have influence, It's like our words can command people to do things, good things or bad things. So we have to understand that we can also kill people by our words. Our tongue was made to worship. It was made to praise others. It was made to give, good feelings towards others. It wasn't made to condemn or hurt other people's feelings. So again, the power of our words are it can never be understated. You have to really be careful about the things that you say. And just to reiterate on that one last time, you can kill people with your words. There's a story where a woman comes and make a stop by the priest, and she tells the priest that this was her last stop before she was about to kill herself. Then the priest told her something. He spoke to her, told her some words, and then she ended up not killing herself. The words that you speak can save people's lives. They can also take away people's lives. The third and last part, as you guys know, what is it?
Oh,
Action. And the action, this is the part that's most obvious to us. This is the part that, a lot of us already know. Not only is it wrong from the eyes of God, but even in the secular world, in our world, you can get arrested. This is the one that, that everybody sees. But we have to understand that the action is not the beginning of the sin, right? We talked about this for the past 5 minutes. It's, you think of it, you speak it. And then if someone gets to that stage, what does that mean? That means they allowed the thought to linger in their mind. They allowed it to grow. And when they allowed it to grow, it eventually became into action. And the story that we have here as an example is the story of David. And when he has, he sleeps with the wife of someone, he sleeps with a woman that's not his wife. And the man whose wife it is, he sends that man out to war and makes him go to the front lines deliberately so that he gets killed. And in this, if we really break it down, not only did he have him killed, but he thought about he created a plan, right? He thought about I need this I need him to go away because I can't have this, I can't let anyone find out about it. So he thought of it. He thought of the plan. He spoke to people to command him to go out in the front. Then he was killed. So the action was only the result of what he was already thinking. The sin is a multi-step process. And then there's the part of self-destruction that we talked about. And self-destruction, as we said last time, is not just suicide. Because, self-destruction is really, like not taking care of yourself, not taking care of your body, not taking care of your temple of God. And also, when we talk about suicide as well, you can't blame someone or judge someone for having the thoughts of wanting to take their own life. The same way you can't judge someone for coughing if they have a cold. If they have a cold, they're going to cough. So if someone's thinking about suicidal thoughts about taking their own life, you have to understand, like, what is it about them? What is it that they're lacking that they do not have that's making them think this way? So that's just to be considered about, like, the things that people are going through. And also, again, your body, you have to take care of it. It's a temple of God. And one thing that we said last time is that our body is God's, and we're leasing it, right? So we have the power to do what we want with our body, but this is really God's temple, right? So we have to be conscious of the things that we do, the things that we take in, the substances, all the things that we do that can, disrupt the holiness of our temple, of our body. And last but not least, we talked about the consequence of murder. So once you actually commit the act of killing another person, certain things happen. First of all, you can go into despair. You can feel hopelessness. You can feel just like Cain when he killed his brother Abel. He was in despair. He got depressed. And not only that, but all the people around him, his family, his friends, all the people that he loved, start to look at him bad because, when you kill somebody, the people even that's closest to you are going to look at you different. And we have to understand that we are made in the image of God. And when we do things that stray away from his image, such as killing someone, people are going to not want to be around you. So you have to understand the consequence of this sin. It's not just the fact that you took someone else's life, but the people around you no longer want to affiliate themselves with you. They'll struggle to accept you as before. So, and the homework was, it's been throughout the series, is to read Exodus 20, and the homework was to, give words of comfort to others.
Ruth has a question.
Sorry.
What's your question?
Our church's stance on suicide, in the fact that you don't get to pass if you don't have a prayer service if you commit suicide. But I've just heard whenever people have talked to me about it, they've said, what if it's from depression and that commit suicide because of depression, and that's a sickness, and that sickness control their actions and because of commit suicide. So how does the church deal
I'm just moving. So that's a very important topic, and I try to address it when we were talking about that, and it's a serious topic. So our job as deacons is to state the teachings of the church, right? The purpose of the priest is to go individually and then understand the specific conditions of what happened. That's the purpose of the priest. So when we're talking about just, if we're making a general claim, suicide is a sin because it's an act of killing or destroying. But then each and every single situation is to be addressed with a spiritual father. That's why the church is beautiful, right? So the priest is there to assess and kind of look at everything as the whole picture, not just a fast cut rule. So when you're talking about depression, that is a sickness. It is a sickness. It needs to be treated like a sickness, right? So that's a different case altogether. But again, so you can't use that in order to say so it's okay or it's not okay. It's a delicate issue that's meant to be treated with the confessional fathers, which is why I should have answered that question.
But I have a question with that. So, I mean, as far as killing themselves, isn't that already there's something wrong?
So just with the idea, without any other variables, without asking why. So again, murder is a sin, right? Now sick people go and kill. like sometimes, right? Like mentally sick.
Yeah.
That is also a sickness. They just needed help, right? So I mean, like there's so many like areas that we can talk about it, but the act of destroying yourself, whether that's like spiritually or like actually physically, is a sin. Like we can't go back about it, right? But then when you investigate what happens and you see the details of it, and you understand that there's something causing that, like a serious sickness that's meant to be treated differently. Just like some person who's going through mental sickness picks up a gun and shoots a whole bunch of people. That's a sickness, right? So we need to understand what it is, and again, that's why, you know, the church. So the purpose of the deacon is to teach the teachings of the church. The purpose of the priest is to go and investigate every like one-on-one basis. That's what the confession father is there for, right? Yeah.
So does that mean like based on the situation they'd be allowed to give the?
So again, like that's just, you know, the teaching of the church is very solid, and we can't change that. But the priest goes and investigates what happens. So I'm not gonna say like
have the right to.
Absolute. That's why he's a priest. Whatever you abide on earth is abiding in heaven. Whatever you free on earth is free in heaven. I mean that is exactly what it is. He has the authority. I don't have any authority. I buy coffee. Yeah, in the back.
So with a fair analogy, going off the whole mental illness, if someone kills someone else and it's determined that it's because of the mental illness, you know, when they go to court, there's a different set of punishment.
Right.
There's a different set after they go through that trial. So
Right.
I don't know if that compares. If that's
Like
where you're
absolutely.
going.
So even the world has recognized this, right? Even the world has gone as far as saying, "Hey, no, this person is sick. They need help. It's a mental institution, like to get help." I mean, even if human beings can understand that, of course, our Heavenly Father in heaven can understand that sickness is sickness. Absolutely. Any other questions? I know this is a delicate issue for a lot of people.
Could you have stood up when you said all this?
You want to do it again?
No.
So last week we heard about
It's a down situation.
you said rock it out. How's everybody doing? You guys look good? You guys miss me?
No.
Abai told me we were meeting somewhere else, and then I came last week and nobody was here. But no, I wanted to come for the record. Alright. You know why I'm laughing? Really? Oh yeah.
Way back.
Oh yeah, it could be. Number one, so you kind of called me out on it. For some people, today's gonna be a repeat. I'll tell y'all straight up. I copy and paste it. I'm tired. Second, you guys are in the street today. We're gonna have some fun. Like, get ready. We're about to talk about some stuff. Get ready. Yeah, I'm telling you. We're gonna talk today. You know? Get ready. It's a fun class. Y'all about to get uncomfortable. I'm gonna see how uncomfortable I can make y'all. So, oh yeah, what's today's commandment we talking about? Some people are like, why did I come today? Like the wrong one. Y'all about to get uncomfortable. I'm gonna tell you guys straight up. Because this commandment, you know, like we talk about all the other commandments. We talk about it, whatever. Like, you know, honor God and nobody else but God. Yeah, you're right. Honor the Sabbath. I really should. Don't kill. Of course not. No adultery. What's the next one? What's the come on, let's get it. Why? Because like everybody's like, no adultery, no adultery. And then like, oh my goodness. But then come. You sure you're bringing this?
Malako, pull your sheets up a little bit.
Oh man. Yo, you dropped your phone like 8 times. Just leave it on the floor. There's no reason to pick it up again. What was I saying? Oh, it's gonna be an interesting day. You guys came out at the right time too. I promise you, boo boo. We're gonna have a good time today. Absolutely. You must not commit adultery. That is the commandment for the day. You must not commit adultery. Like I said, this is the one commandment that we kind of snap our fingers and we're like, let's keep it moving. I don't feel like talking about that today. We'll talk about that when I get older, right? Because it makes us feel uncomfortable. And there's a lot of stuff in here that we really don't want to hear about. So whenever it's being preached, we kind of shut our brains off and then really try to stick with the ones that, we could do. Like, come to church. Yeah, I'm going to work on that. Like, don't do this and, like, don't club. I really should stop. But, like, the adultery, like, come on. Don't talk about that. Come on. Oh, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it. So, first of all, notice how, like, the position of the 10 Commandments, right? And I always like to talk about, like, we're going to talk about the commandment, but sometimes when you read in the Bible, it's not just enough to like, read the words. Look at the position, the words, how it's written, why it's written in that way, and everything like that. What was the last commandment we looked at? Don't kill. What's the premise of that commandment? Like, what is it really attacking? It's talking about the procedure of ending life. The commandment right after it is talking about or addressing the commandment that relates with the genesis of life. Do you see? There's a reason why I did that. How it progressed. Don't kill, don't end life, and don't mess around with the same vehicle that God has given you to produce life. Right? Sex is amazing. That's beautiful. Thank you, God. It is a gift from heaven. And I'm so happy that God gave us this great gift. And we're going to talk about this. Because we're not going to get up here and say like, oh, hey, the 3-letter words. No, sex. I love it. It's amazing. That's great. No, that's really stuff. We're going to talk about this. Side comment. Last time I gave this sermon in North Carolina, my mom was like, "This how work." So, again, this sin alters the same vehicle that God has given us to produce life with. This is why the sin is a big deal. It's a big deal because, number one, the sin has severe consequences for both your soul and your body. Compare that with the other commandments. For example, honor the Sabbath. What really happens when you don't go to church? Well, you get in a fight with God. But that's kind of about it. With the exception of don't kill, and that's like the one that hopefully we're not struggling with, right? Like, hopefully. So with the exception of that one, this one has the immediate cost to ruin, not just your soul, but your body. It has severe consequences for your body. The obvious ones, like STD and all this stuff, but there's other ones that we're going to talk about, long-term, serious problems that it could bring into our marriage later on. And the irony is, most people, especially when I'm talking about adultery, of course, I'm talking about things like fornication, I'm talking about things like masturbation, I'm talking about things that, again, we're going to feel very uncomfortable to talk about today. And these things, under the umbrella of adultery, have the consequence of literally ruining your life, especially as you get older and you progress with life. And we'll talk about that today. We're going to talk about that. So this commandment, there's a sense of urgency behind it. Not just because of your soul, it's important. Your soul is important, obviously. But I'm going to be focusing a lot more on the physical damage, the temporal damage that it has within this world, and how much it can really ruin your life, literally. Consequence of this sin. Adultery destroys families, not just the sinner. So unlike the other ones, like when you don't go to church, you're hurting yourself. You're hurting yourself and yourself only. This sin obviously has the like adultery in the sense of like, cheating on your wife, whatever, will break families apart. But again, we're going to talk about how even fornication and things like masturbation, which is done in a private like room and by yourself, has the consequences to destroy your family and affect your family even after you're married, even years after the fact. And we're going to talk about that. Again, fornication destroys the soul and the body of your partner, not just yours. The problem with this sin is when you go down, you're taking somebody else with you. It's not just on you. You're taking somebody else with you. The commandment, this commandment influences all other commandments. And this is particularly true with the first 3 commandments. So honor God, don't call his name in vain, honor the Sabbath. So in order to have a good relationship with God, you need to have a sense of purity. And what this sin does is, it takes your spiritual purity away. And it clouds your spiritual eyes in order not to see God. And I challenge you. If like you're falling in this sin, especially those like who grew up in the church and stuff, and you're falling under this sin, how difficult is it to pray? How difficult is it to come to church? It's very difficult. Once you start to get away with this, and you're like not in tune with you and how you're treating this particular commandment, I guarantee you, your like bond with God is not where it needs to be. You're not in tune anymore. This particular commandment, as opposed to the other ones, it has the ability to take away a lot of your relationship and your connection with God, because it clouds it and it takes you away. This is part of the reason why a lot of young people are not ready for sacramental life. If you talk to like 9 out of 10 young people like our age, and you talk to them about confessing and taking Holy Communion, the first thing they will tell you is, I'm not ready. And when you push a little bit further, you find out because they're not ready to give this up, this sin up. Or they don't know how to confess this sin. This sin literally gets in our way of the kingdom of heaven. Because nobody's afraid to come and say, hey, are you confessing today? Yes. What are you confessing about? I'm confessing the fact that I don't come to church every Sunday. But people are not really ready to confess about adultery and what they're doing in their room, in their bedroom alone. Like, nobody's ready to do that. And because of the shame, people are really, really walking away from sacramental life, the authority that gives you the power to get into the kingdom of heaven. It is a serious, serious sin. Most importantly, God hates this sin. And I use that word seriously. He hates this sin. 1 Corinthians chapter 6 verse 18. Flee immorality. Every other sin that a man commits is outside of the body. But the immoral man sins against his own body. Ephesians chapter 5 verse 5. For this you know with certainty, that no immoral or impure person, covetous man, who is an adulterer, has an inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and God. Proverbs chapter 6 verse 32. But the man who commits adultery is an utter fool, for he destroys himself. God hates this sin. And yet, for many people, this is your it's okay sin. This is the sin that we're like, all right, like, can we talk about the next one? Like, I'm not ready to give that up. Or I don't want to talk about that. This is the sin that we don't want to challenge ourselves. Number one, maybe because we think that we'll never be able to overcome it. And I really, really believe that God has a sense of humor. The reason why I say this is, I don't know how many of you guys know, the part of the brain that controls our desire, like sexual desires, is the same type of like part of the brain that controls hunger and like food and stuff like that. So like, when you're hungry, you're like, oh, I'm hungry. This is, like when like you have like the desires, like sexual desires, it's the same part of the brain. I really feel like God is like, because it's like, if you think about it. So for that reason, because it's like a deep connection, some of us fear that we can never overcome these sins. And for that reason alone, we're not willing to even talk about it. We're not even willing to address it. Even within ourselves, forget like the confession father. Even with ourselves, we're not willing to say, okay, I'm going to work on this sin for myself. That is a problem. That is a problem. Because this sin alone is preventing you from getting into the kingdom of heaven, and it's preventing you from seeing the real image of Christ. It's preventing you from seeing. There's no way you could see the image of Christ without at least willing to be working on this. So don't be like Judas. And I talk about this. Judas is an amazing character to me. Not just because he, like, a lot of people talk about he betrayed Christ with a kiss. You know, like that's the key, right? Not just he betrayed him, but with a kiss. Like, but with me, the amazement of Judas begins before at the Last Supper. So the Last Supper happens right after Judas goes and agrees to betray Jesus. So he goes, he talks to the people, the Sanhedrin people, and he says, I will betray Jesus, I got your back, don't worry about it. Immediately after that, they go into the Last Supper, Matthew chapter 26, verses 21 through 25. While they were eating, he said, I tell you the truth, Jesus is saying this, I tell you the truth, one of you will betray me. Mind you, he already agreed to betray Jesus. Greatly distressed, each one asked him in turn, am I the one, Lord? He replied, one of you has just eaten from this bowl with me will betray me. For the Son of Man must die, as the scriptures declared long ago. But how terrible it will be for the one who betrays him. It would be far better for that man if he had never been born. Judas, the one who would betray him, also asked, Rabbi, am I the one? And Jesus told him, you've said it. Yes. You are, like, yeah, you agreed already. Like, what are you talking? Yes, you are the one. You just went and you just said you're going to betray Jesus. And I'm telling you that one of you will betray me. Obviously, it's you. What are you not getting? What are you not getting? The same way Jesus is telling us, one of the fornicators, no fornicator will get into the kingdom of heaven. Okay, will I go into the kingdom of heaven? No fornicator, no adulterer will go into the kingdom of heaven. But like, what about me? God forgive me. Like, no adulterer, no fornicator will go into the kingdom of heaven. Don't be Judas. Understand that God hates this sin. He hates this sin. And it's not like the other sins, because this sin is a sin that you do against your own body. You sin against your own body. God hates this sin, and you are getting in his way of his divine work of like producing life. That's why he hates this. You're getting in the way of his divine work of producing life. Next part, I love the next part. Sex is like a game. Sex is like a game. Like I said before, I'll say it again. Contrary to what most people believe the church thinks about sex, sex is a gift from God. It's an amazing thing that God has given us. We should be happy. But just like any other game, imagine like, so the first station or whatever, like what is it called, like one of those like game stations that I ever got was a Super Nintendo. Don't do that. Don't do that. I don't know, not so funny. that was back in the day. So the first game, the first day, we didn't know what was going on, right? Like all we knew is like this is a game. Oh, game like that, game. So like we go and we don't know what to do. So in order to play the game correctly, we had to read the instructions. Now whose game is it? Whose game is it?
The producer.
That's my game. What you mean it's the producer? So like the engineer, they made the game, but it's my game. The engineer knows more about the game than I do, but it's my game. If I want to have fun, like I could take the game and I could throw it at my brother, right? Like, that's fun. But that's not the intention of the game. That's not how you're supposed to use the game. It's not meant to be thrown around. There are buttons, and you press them, and things happen on the screen, right? So in order for me to understand, I have to read the directions and follow correctly to use the game for its intended purpose. Sex is like a game. There are rules. You gotta follow the rules. It's not a one-player game. You guys get what I'm saying? It takes a little time. It's not a one-player game. You can't play more than 2 people. It takes a little bit of time. You can't play against your own team. You have to play against the opposite team. It's a 2-player game. Just The first time I was teaching this, I got in trouble. What kind of game is this? So, and the last important thing, we should probably close the door. They can hear you anyways, bro. What kind of game are they playing?
It's not like you're not live.
We are also live. We're gonna get a lot of comments today.
Oh, you are.
Oh, really? So are we coming up?
It's fun, bro.
Now we're all about to take a
Get your blown out.
I'm recording before it's never like that.
All right, let's keep going. And the last important rule is that you have to wait until marriage. That's the rule of the game. That's the rule of the game. Now here's the thing. You could be like, it's my body. Like I'm the one in the relationship. Like I'm making this decision. But the one who made this game is God. He's saying if you want to use it properly and like have fun, great, like whatever. Like trust me, I want you to have fun. But if you want to use it properly, follow my instructions. I know more about the game than you could possibly know about it. I know how this game is supposed to be used. I know how this is supposed to be used correctly. I'm telling you, there's a right way to do it, and if you use it the wrong way, it's gonna break. You're gonna break the game. Don't do it. Don't do it. So what happens if like we decide to break the rules of the game? And these are practical things that I'm telling you guys. Like today, I'm not telling you theories, I'm telling you about real life issues with like married couples that are actually going through some of this stuff that I'm talking about, and real life things that I've talked to, and you could go online and read forums after forums about the stuff that I'm saying, and it breaks my heart to hear about it. Number one, you start to compare. Like we're human beings, right? We're human beings. So like the purpose of this game is to discover each other's body. Like if you read the Bible, it says, and then he knew her. So it's about knowing about the other person. It's about discovering each other, whatever. Now, let's say you have multiple partners. And you're there at marriage. You're sitting down. Your brain, you're a human being, you can't help but like, okay, like when she does this, it's not like the first one. When she's doing this, it's like number 2. Then the other one, oh, number 4 was better. This one is not like, and then you start to judge your own wife or your own husband. Why? Because you have like other experiences to kind of match up with. We're human beings, we naturally do this. We do this with everything. And if you talk about relationships, we do this all the time, right? Like, oh, like my boyfriend is like this, he's funny, whatever. Like my first one, the problem was this. But this one is like, we're comparing. That is comparing. The same thing happens when you buy like a new dress. I like this dress, but I have another one that's like this, whatever. We do this with everything. What makes you think it's gonna be different when it comes to like, nothing. Nothing is different. So when it comes down to it, and your number starts to go up, now mistakes happen. But when your number starts to go up, what do you think is going to happen in your brain? You're going to start comparing your own spouse. You're going to start like, why? Because that's what we do. We're human beings. But that's nothing compared to the next one. You're practicing divorce. And I say this like with a heavy heart. So the point of a relationship is to figure out whether or not the person you're with is gonna be your husband or wife. The point of dating is not to treat them like husband and wife. And we make that mistake all the time. This game is meant to be played once you're married. So if you're playing this game while you're dating, you're treating them like a husband and a wife. Now, especially, this is even worse if you start living with a significant other before marriage. This is especially like true. So then you have like this girl, like this boy and this girl, they're dating, and then they're like, okay, whatever, and then they start playing the game, they start living together, whatever, and then they break up. And then they find another partner and they do the same thing, they break up. What do you think they're doing? They're hooking up, they're breaking up, they're hooking up, they're breaking up. That is divorce. It is getting ready for a divorce. So once they're getting together, like in a marriage, and they're calling, okay, like I'm in a marriage now, the divorce is just another breakup. They've been doing this all their life. It's just another breakup, except for signing some papers. They're so used to not being committed. They're so used to walking away when things get complicated. That this is just another breakup. This is very, very true, especially in this society. That's why like, the divorce rates are jumping up, right? Because before there was like this fear of like, there's no way I'll leave like my significant other. There was that like feeling behind it, right? This is especially true with like our grandparents' generation. Like they could have like problems, but they were like, I'm not like, no way, I'm not gonna give up my, because that was the only one that they knew. That's it. There's nothing else. But if they've been breaking up, divorce is just another breakup. What's the big deal? That is what I mean by it will start influencing your family. You take away the motivation for wanting to get married. This is especially true for like older girls, like in the 30s, right? So if you're dating a guy and you're already playing the game and you gave him everything, and especially now, like we're seeing in our generation with like young girls having kids without marriage, what's the motivation for the husband to get married? He already has a kid, he already has you, he's already getting everything. What's gonna be different once you're married? Why should he get like committed? There's no motivation. And a lot of girls, and this is true, in their 30s, they complain, I'm not married. It happens because you're giving up a lot of things before it's supposed to happen. Now, there's literally, if you take all the good things that marriage is supposed to propose and you apply it before marriage, then why even look forward to marriage? There's no reason. You took the purpose away. And that begins to influence what we think of a family. Again, so sex is not like, it's not the only, like a lot of people say sex is not everything, It's not, but it's something. It's very important. In fact, it's so important, it's one of the 3 pillars of marriage. We know this, right? So the 3 pillars of marriage say being like supporting one another, and that's what the West would call love, being in love. But we know that love is what? Is it a feeling?
It's an action.
It's an action. That's what like that's why support one another. You show your partner how like much you love them through your actions. The second one being sex, the third one being children, right? So when one of these pillars get damaged, the entire like family dynamic gets damaged. For example, like if you look at again a lot of reasons for why people have a divorce, if they're not helping one another out, you can imagine why they would get divorced. At the other end, this is especially true with like, if they're not on the same agenda when it comes to children. There's a lot of problems within the family. This is particularly true when you have like a family where the kid dies because of whatever reason, right? Heaven forbid. And the 2 parents just don't know how to like treat that. They have a problem with each other. Because children are like kind of the foundation of marriage, the 3rd pillar. The second one is sex. If they're not having healthy sex, which is very important, then they have problems. But again, you take that away, that pillar of marriage, and you insert it into dating, then by the time you come into marriage, you already screwed up the order that something is already wrong before even getting into marriage. We're going to talk about how the next example in the Bible is, I think, so like clear to me as far as what can go wrong when we confuse this game with lust. right? Sex is a beautiful thing. It's meant to be enjoyed. It's meant to be like, treated in a special way. But when it's confused with lust, we insert it before the right time, we're going to see the consequence. And I love this story. How many of you guys know the story? I'm known in Tamar. No? Yeah, some of you guys know it, right? So, we've talked about this before, I think. So, Amnon, for those of you guys who don't know, has this like huge crush on this girl called Tamar. It's not just a crush, he's like in love with her. And he says, I'm so like in love with her that I'm almost ill. He's like, I'm sick. I love you so much, right? So this guy, he's a little weird kid. I wouldn't hang around with him. But like who talks like that. So like, then he calls his friend, and this story is like, I promise you, like, I feel like it takes place every single day in the like, whatever. So they have boy talk with his friend, and I never could say that name correctly. Jonadab, and I couldn't say it either. That's why he walked out. So his boy, he goes to his boy, and they're having a little boy talk. He's like, yo, man, you know what I'm saying? Like, I got a girl, like, I like her, whatever. He's like, so what's up, man? What's going on? Like, what you about to do with this? And then he's like, I don't know, man. Like, what do you think I should do? And like, his boy tells him what you would expect. Oh, my son, what's going on? I'm sorry. So, what was I saying?
His boy.
Oh, yeah. Do you know how to say that name? Jonadab.
Say it in good Turbo.
So, what was I saying?
The boy.
The boy, he's like, yo, so what you about to do with this? Like, handle your girl, you know? And then, so this is exactly what he tells him. I tell you what to do. Go back to bed, pretend you're ill. When your father comes to see you, ask him to tell Tamar, the girl he likes, come and prepare some food for you. Tell him you'll feel better if she prepares it as you want it and feeds you with her own hands. So he's saying, go handle your business, bro. Like, go. Do it now. Like, you know what I mean? So I'm known as like, I got you. I'm going to take care of business. So he goes back home, and then he's like, oh, I feel so sick of love. so he's like, I need me some atmeat. And then Tamar comes, she's like, I got you. And then she's like, I'm gonna make some atmeat for Amnon. And then she makes the atmeat. And then she goes, and then he's like, I want everybody to get out. And then Tamar is like, what you talking about? What you mean everybody? And then everybody leaves now, it's Amnon and Tamar, right? So then she comes with the atmeat, and then she's like, here you go, I'm gonna eat it. And then you know what he does? He grabs her, and he puts her in bed. And she's like, what are you doing? Like, stop. And he's like, no, let's sleep together. And he rapes her. And at this moment, now you gotta understand the cultural significance. She's a virgin. Women at the time, the only thing they had going on for them was like their virginity. Right? And then there's no like proper marriage. You don't get like a white gown and walk down the aisle. If you lost your virginity with a man, that means you were married to that person. That's what it meant. Right? You wear a different type of like dress, like no other man will marry you, and even your attire changed. So for her, that act meant they were married. That's it. If he leaves her, she doesn't have any chance for ever getting married. Like, that's it. In that context, in that culture. So this time she's like, well, that's it. Like, so this is what it is. And then look at verse 14. But Amnon wouldn't listen to her. And since he was stronger than her, he raped her. Then suddenly, and this is the part that hits me every time. Then suddenly Amnon's love turned to hate, and he hated her even more than he had loved her. Get out of here, he snarled at her. This is the vehicle, the game, and it's being used in the wrong way. Number one, emotionally, I don't care how old you are. Emotionally, you are not prepared to handle this game unless you're married. It's not about age. It's not about like how much in deep in love you are with the person. God is telling you, this is not the way to do it. I don't care what society says. God is saying, trust me. Trust me. There is a better way to handle this. And it literally ruins your relationship. And that relationship, especially like nowadays, like the trend, if you follow the trend, like you meet the girl, you kiss her, you have sex with her, and then you tell her you love her. Right? Like, it's okay to have sex within the first like 2 weeks, but if you tell a girl you love her in 2 weeks, well, we're not there yet. We know each other. We played games. Like, you know, like, what you talking about? So, but that's the thing. Without emotionally being there, and then, here's the thing. Because people confuse lust with sex, people are in lust for like 2 years and think they're ready for marriage. And by the time they get into marriage, they figure out they don't know that person at all because that lust is gone. And they've turned that beautiful thing into a mechanical act. Then the passion is gone. This is happening over and over and over again in a lot of young couples. Where by the time where they're allowed to do it, they just don't feel like it. Oh, we're gonna talk about that. The next thing, and it's related. Everything is related. And this is one we're gonna get really uncomfortable. When I was talking about adultery, I said within that umbrella, I'm talking about fornication, and I'm also talking about masturbation. And again, this is the part where a lot of people turn off their brains. This is the part where a lot of people are like, whoa, you don't talk about that. It's wrong. Yeah, but like, let's not talk about it. No, we're gonna talk about it. You know what I mean? Because it's dead. This sin, you know why it's horrible? Because there's no social pressure. It's something you do in your private. Like by yourself, like nobody knows, right? So like, for example, take drinking, right? So drinking, like whenever you drink a lot and you become sloppy and people kind of call you out on it, you become embarrassed. But there's a social pressure behind it, and you try to slow down. Even if, for example, smoking weed or something like that, right? Like you start thinking, okay, I'm about to get a job, like I can't do this, like whatever, I need to slow down, right? Things like going to church, like people ask you, hey, where were you? I didn't see you last Sunday, whatever. There's some social pressure. This literally nobody else knows besides you and maybe your confessor father and God. It's so easy to abuse it. It's so easy for this sin to take over your life and not even know it. You wake up one day, you're like, what's going on? And you could do a great job of hiding it. You can come to church on Sunday mornings happy with Jesus and all this stuff and do whatever you want. But at the end of the day, when you're by yourself, you know who you are. And the real you comes out when nobody's looking at you. It's easy to pretend. We're all great actors and actresses. Amazing at it. The hard part is when you are alone. And how you are with God. That is what defines who you are. Your real you comes out. And if you live in this pretending lifestyle for a very long time, it will come out in marriage. One of the things, and I'm not married, and I'll tell y'all straight up, but if you talk to a lot of married people, there's this thing that we think of, the non-married people, that when you're married, your entire life changes. Right? That's not how it works. Does it change? As in who you are, essentially. Do you just change overnight? No. You're still the same person that you were yesterday. The same bad habits you have, unless you do something about it today, you're still going to bring it into the marriage. The same bad habits you have. The same mindset that you have. It continues. Some people say, okay, I'll do this until marriage. It's just if you tell me not to have sex, clearly I'm going to try to do something about this until marriage. And then marriage comes? No, that's not how it works. You have to work on yourself first and make sure that you're solid and grounded, especially in your spirituality, before you can go on further. Especially guys. Now, in this society, again, pornography was seen as something only guys watch. With this generation, that's no longer true. But pornography has the power to be addictive, sometimes even more than some of like cocaine and heroin, all these strong drugs. They did an experiment where they were doing the x-ray of the brains of people who were addicted in substance abuse, and they x-rayed the MRI. He was whispering. We don't got x-ray on that, right? So they did it. Clearly, I'm not a science major.
As soon as you said that, you got confused. I was like, it's MRI.
So we gotta edit that out. I'm not making it up. So they were doing an MRI of like the brain of people who are like addicted to like substance abuse, and an MRI on people who are addicted to pornography. Believe it or not, their brain matched up physically. Meaning like once you're addicted, your brain, like your brain changes to match that of an addicted person. It's crazy, it's insane what this stuff is doing to our brain. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I remember like when we had to take like our health class, like in, I think it was 6th grade. Oh, no, not 6th. I took it again like in 9th grade. I think in 9th grade they teach you. And they tell you like, masturbation is good for you. Like, you should do it. Like, it. Yes, I remember. Like, I remember in my high school. Like, that's what they said that. Even in middle school, I think middle school they make you watch videos and stuff like that when you're going for and they talk about that.
So
and I always thought that was strange. I'm like, why are you?
So if you read the research, what it's saying is like masturbation has a chance of like relaxing you, and like you have all this such and all that stuff. That's what the research is showing. So number one, that doesn't talk about pornography. Number one.
Right.
So pornography has, the research is showing how much it really affects you. Now, not particularly in masturbation, but I was yesterday I was researching, and I'm gonna get into it, the effect of multiple sex partners on the decline of your sexual desires over a period of long time, right? So we all know that like women in their 40s and 50s, they naturally start losing desires, like sexually, right? Like this is kind of given. So they're saying if there's a correlation between like the number of sexual partners they have and how much the sexual desires go down. So the articles are saying there's no correlation. All these like crazy Christians are saying this, whatever. And they're saying the real cause for the decline of sexual desire is depression. There's other independent researches that is showing that multiple sexual partners leads to depression. Ergo, like multiple sexual partners leads to depression, depression leads to decline in sexual desires. So a lot of the research that they're talking about, you have to read between the lines. Why are they saying this? There's a huge fight against the Christian community to make us seem like we're crazy. Now, scientifically speaking, what if like a guy, does this sin once, will he die? No, he was not going to. Spiritually, yes, there's a spiritual consequence. But then, right now, there's a serious epidemic of addiction. That addiction has a huge problem physically, and they're done a lot. So a lot of the stuff that you read, and by the way, addiction they're talking about is like, I think like more than 3 or 4 times a month. That's how they define it as. So a lot of these things that they're doing, enough data to talk about it, and they're talking about very remote cases of when it happens. But again, we're looking at everything, and there's obviously spiritual consequences to that. And right now, I'm talking about especially pornography. And that is kind of, and I don't know if you wanted to add something on this, especially pornography. I mean, this is like, you guys could go and like do the research. What's happening is, so our brain is again, like the game is meant to say, you have a partner, you and your partner, like as you guys are setting up, right, to play the game, your brain starts to imagine what's gonna happen next. So like your brain is getting ready, something great is gonna happen. Get ready for takeoff, right? So like your brain is imagining the entire time, like, it's about to go down. You got the girl. You hug the girl. You kiss the girl, right? So all this stuff is happening. What pornography does is it takes away the imagination away, and it shortcuts directly to like the award, right? Like whatever, the glory or whatever. So then you rewire your brain to think that you can have this type of excitement without the need of a human being. What's happening with a lot of young couples who are married is they are unable to perform in bed. Because they have rewired their brain. Literally, this is like erectile dysfunction, ED, right? Go look it up. It's serious. It's becoming a serious problem in young couples because they're unable to perform with their wife because they've trained their body. They don't need anybody else to have that glory. It's a huge, huge, huge problem. It's a scary problem to have. And God is saying, hey, I'm telling you, this stuff is a gift. But if you use it the wrong way, you'll be broken. The same thing is true with women. Women have this need of being so their body functions differently than men do, right? So the whole process of excitement and the sex is not just the 5-second period of time. That's not what it is. It's the part before it, during it, and after. Even after, they require some type of love and care and gentleness. That, all of it, is what they think of sex. That's how they're wired, physically. This is why, after sex, women require some type of caringness, right? They require that. That's how they're wired. When you get young, especially young, 17, the boy doesn't know what he's doing, right? All he cares about is his instant glorification. So now here's the woman who needs this type of affection. She doesn't get it, so she rewires her brain to thinking this is a physical act. If you talk to a lot of women in their mid-20s who have been sexually active, they'll tell you it's scaring me now, sex is nothing. I just have sex and nothing happens to me. I've had girls openly tell me this. Because after a while, they don't feel the emotional connection of the sex anymore. Because they rewire their brain to thinking it's just a mechanical act. So now, fast forward 10 years later, they're not interested in having sex. They just don't want to. It's a mechanical act. So here's the real problem. You talk about having kids. The guy is unable to do it with his wife, regardless of how beautiful she is, because he's rewired his brain to thinking he doesn't need her. And the woman doesn't want to have sex, because she has rewired her brain to thinking it's a mechanical act, or bored. How are they going to have kids? This is a real issue. This is a real problem. It has the potential to ruin families. We think it's just something simple. And you guys see, especially now, there's more and more research, more and more documentaries about how young people, young people, before their brain is fully developed, they get into this world. And it's images after images after images. And a lot of the research that has been done so far is done on our parents' generation, where they had magazines. So per 1 minute, they would watch one image, right? And 1 minute, they're getting so much stuff imprinted in their brain. The game has changed. And the research is not caught up with the technology. And literally, it is damaging the brain. And the same thing is true with women. It is affecting them at the same rate. And I'm telling you, this disease, this sin will destroy your soul. And it will destroy your body. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. This is why we've got to take the time and take it very seriously. It's not one of those things where we okay, what's the next commandment? I don't want to talk about this. It's something that we really got to re-examine and say, wait a minute, what am I doing? Especially if you're in a relationship, again, outside of marriage, fornication. You are setting yourself up for failure by the time you get married. God has not intended it for that. It is a gift, and God is telling you how to use it correctly. Use it correctly. So now the question is, how do we do that? Because we've already kind of touched up on it. The truth of the matter is, the part of the brain that handles hunger is the same type of the top part of your brain that controls sexual desire. So how do we control it? The best thing to do is don't get in the ring. I'll explain what that means. If you have professional fighting, there's a boxing ring, right? And if you see some huge guy that's come on, let's go. Don't don't get in the ring and fight with him if you know you're gonna lose. Right? And it kind of makes sense. Like, it makes sense. If you're gonna go in the ring with a huge guy who's gonna beat you up, instead, get out of the ring and get somebody to fight your battles for you. And here's the analogy I like to use. If you're like a second grader, right? And like the devil is like a fifth grade bully, like don't try to fight him. You could call on Christ, and Christ would be like a multi-black belt professional fighter against a fifth grade bully, right? So for you, a fifth grade bully is like hard to defeat, but if Christ, you call on Christ, you know you could beat the fight every single time. I'm gonna give you guys practical examples of what I mean. If you're in a relationship, and I tell my students this all the time, if a girl calls the boy and she tells him, hey, I'm all alone, why don't you come by? And the boy says, okay, he basically had sex with her. Like it's a done deal. If he goes to the house and he's alone with the girl, they're not gonna pray. Right? They're not gonna play video games. They're gonna play another game. You don't know what I'm talking about. And what do you think is gonna happen? And I have young people that come to me all the time and they talk to me like, oh my gosh, I almost broke my promise to God, like it was bad, whatever. I was like, okay, like it's okay, we can come up with a game plan. And then we start talking about it. They're like, no, but I have a date with him next week. Where? At his house. Who's there? Nobody. What do you think is gonna happen? People, it amazes me. People take vacations to like the beach and like alone, without marriage. What do you think is gonna happen? Like, what do you think is gonna happen? This is your spiritual life. Like, how serious are you? Don't be Judas, right? If you're serious about your spiritual life and you're serious about getting into the kingdom of heaven, don't be Judas. Wake up. No fornicator will go into the kingdom of heaven. If you're serious about it, stop. Because the time to fight the battle is not at the house with the girl in bed. I hope I don't do it tonight. Like that's not the time to start like fighting the battle. The time to fight the battle is way before. As my mom always says, "Ariko mata." You guys know what that means? Like what? So Ariko mater.
There we go.
So like if you don't want somebody, like if this is my house and I don't want anybody coming here, I would put my gate here, like to ensure that nobody will, like, and then I would put like several gates in between to ensure that nobody would get here. Arikomatsu. Alright? So here's an idea. Number one, if you're dating, don't be alone. Like, don't be alone. So if you set that in place, right? If you set that in place, the chances of you fornicating will be slim to none. But since you're not gonna be like the party, I don't know. Like then we got a real talk. Like that's something else. But like, if you're never alone with the person, like what's the chances that something is gonna happen? Nothing. I don't know. That like, generation. Stop. So the problem is, are you guys listening to me? If you're serious, again, how serious are you with your spiritual life? How serious is it? Like, is going to the kingdom of heaven, would it be nice to go? I hope I make it. If it's that, hey, dude, hey, more power to you. If it's like, there is no absolute way I could go to hell. Like, there is none. Like, I have to go into the kingdom of heaven, take it seriously. Like, set it in place. And I always say, if you can't find a person who you sit down and say, hey, you gotta come up with rules for the sake of your spiritual life and mine, and they tell you, I'm not down with it, that's not the person for you. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. Because there's a lot of like things that could come up afterwards. When you wake up and you start to like get into your spiritual life and you see where you are, it's just not worth it. Don't play with fire. It's like I tell my students, the closer you are with fire, the hotter it's gonna get. don't stand next to the fire and tell me you're complaining about it's too hot. Like, I had young people that used to come to me, are we really supposed to wait until marriage? Yeah, but oh my gosh, I can't do it. Like, okay, like, tell me about what you do. Well, Friday I went to the club. Like, what do you think? Like, if you were dancing with a girl and you know what position, what do you think is gonna happen? People wake up. Sometimes, the way we think, the movies we watch, right? And then I get it, like, every single Netflix is like, right? That's how they start, that's how they end, that's how, everything is like. I get it. And, some of the, good movies are like that. Like, they don't care. They don't get it. No, careless, right? Honestly, and I get it, you like to watch movies, just fast forward it. Just fast forward this, look away. I guarantee you, your brain will start to flush out that negative stuff. I promise you, there is no way in the world, if you are playing with fire, you're going to be able to defeat this temptation. I guarantee you, it's not going to happen. There has to be a level of urgency. A level of saying, you know what, I'm going to take this seriously, and I'm going to put some rules and regulations to ensure that this never happens. I'll give you guys one other example. Let's say you're trying to stop, let's say, drinking. You don't want to get drunk because you notice yourself picking up the amount of time that you're drinking, right? And this happens this is a typical college freshman question. Can I go to the club or whatever even if I don't have anything to drink? This is number one. If you guys are Sunday school teachers, you guys know this is a typical question, right? The answer is no. No, because you could do it one Sunday or one Friday or one Saturday, hopefully not a Sunday. But one Friday, you could go and be no, I'm not going to drink today. You want to drink? No. You want to drink? No. You want to drink? No. You want to drink? Maybe. Do you want to drink? Mm-hmm. You want to drink? Just a little. Don't drunk. No. I think you're going to keep doing it, right? But if you say, I'll never be around anywhere where it serves alcohol, is there a possibility you get drunk? No. It's a simple thing. Take it seriously. This is the thing with the devil. The devil is never, especially if you're pretty solid in your spiritual life and you're good with God and you think you're protected. The devil is not going to be here's sex, have it. That's never going to happen. It's never going to happen, right? It's never if you're going to church and serving or whatever, a girl's not going to come up to you and say, have sex with me. That's not how it works. The devil will never try to test you. He's smarter than you. The devil is very smart. What he's going to try to do is, he's going to slowly get you a girl who's churchy, who's very nice, who you feel you don't have to whatever, right? And if he's gonna get you a guy who is very caring, who goes to church, who even tells you to pray. We should read our Bible together, right? That's the guy he's gonna introduce you to. He's not gonna introduce you to the guy who's gonna say, never pray, have sex with me. It's just not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. This is what the devil does. So the devil says, whatever. Then it's gonna be hey, why don't we have why don't you come and by and see my place before we go to dinner? Okay, what's the harm in that? You go and right? Then the next time it's this is let's cuddle. Let's cuddle. I like cuddling. I'm a cuddler. I'm a cuddler too. Then you get to the main course, and then you fall. It's amazing. if we pay attention to the fall of Adam and Eve, you know, we talk about the fall of Adam and Eve, the fall of Adam and Eve, the fall of Adam and Eve. Have you noticed how like the devil didn't give up after Eve fell? Like, if the purpose of Satan was to make Eve fall, like Eve fell, and that should have been the end of the story, right? And he, like, the devil should have gone, no. He was like, I'm not satisfied yet. I want Adam to fall too. Like, if you're gonna fall, I'm gonna make sure you fall to the ground. I'm gonna make sure of it. So he's not gonna go for like the big sins right away. He's gonna go small by small. Just like, remember, the devil first went out to Adam. He didn't go to Eve. He went to Adam. Tried to talk to Adam. Adam didn't want to hear it. So he went to Eve and started talking to her. Oh, niggas said somebody will make the queen of the heaven and the earth. And now he started like, slow by slow. It's nothing bad, right? She looked, she got attention, then eat, and then she took it over to Adam, and then they both fell together. That's the same thing that sin does every single time. Think about the last time you fell because of the sin. It wasn't like he just showed you something, you went for it. It was like a slow progression over time, and before you knew it, you were so deep in, you couldn't come out. The devil is smarter than you. If you want to beat this, like genuinely, don't just worry about like the act of adultery, the act of fornication, the act of masturbation. Worry about all the triggers around it that causes you to fall to this sin. For example, masturbation. Boys, guys, don't bring your laptop to your room. If that's what it is, leave it somewhere else. It's like simple things. Honestly, like your phone, whatever, turn it off, get it out of the room. Like if that's what it's gonna take, do it. If you're in a relationship, whatever the case is, don't be alone. It's a simple thing. It's a simple thing, but it will save your life. Most importantly, and I could tell you guys with certainty, get a confession father. Get a confession father and tell him everything, as uncomfortable as it may be. I remember the first time I confessed, my thing was like, I don't care how uncomfortable I am. I'd rather be uncomfortable and make it to heaven instead of like be ashamed and go to hell. Like that gives me nothing. I'd rather be uncomfortable. I'd rather feel weird talking to some old gray priests, like like some of the priests, right? Telling them like, and not honest, like now it's different because like there is Abba, right? Now it's different. But imagine like you gotta go and like see like a 6-year-old man who knows nothing, like you gotta describe things. It's very weird. It feels very weird. Yeah, you wouldn't know Suliki?
Do you really have to describe it?
We'll talk about confession another day, but the point is, honest, come up with a game plan. You guys listening to me? This is the last thing. Your homework assignment is to go home and really like sit down and really like take it as seriously as you want to. Take it as seriously as you take your spiritual life, whatever that means. Whatever that means. Sit down and write down why, if you're being tempted with the sin, and all young people are, if we're honest, write down exactly what is causing the sin. Well, why do you keep falling? If it's fornication, if it's masturbation, if it's adultery, whatever the case is, sit down and write down what is causing you to fall with the sin and come up with actual, tangible solutions for how you're going to dismiss it. Don't take it lightly. Those of you guys who are in a relationship, listen. It's not worth it. He's not the one from God. If he can't understand you, that you are serious about your spiritual life and you keep falling into the sin, the guy is not meant for you. Let it go. The same thing is true for guys and girls. Especially people talk about they're special on girls, they're special on guys. right? Because socially, it's kind of the norm for the girl to say, no, I don't want to do it, right? But you know how awkward it is for the guy to say he doesn't want to do it? It's so awkward. Like, it seems like his manhood is being questioned, right? But again, guys, it's not worth it. It's not, if a girl cannot understand who you are, your spiritual journey, let her go. She's not meant for you. She's not meant for you. This is important for you guys to understand. That's all I got today. Rosa.
Okay, I think another way that is draining us is the mentality having like, okay, I will overcome not to have sex, but it's okay to kiss. So if we can describe what that like, kissing is okay, but I don't have to do the sex.
So this is the thing. Any act of affection that leads you to sex, you have to cut it out. Does that make sense? Are you guys with me? I want part of the if we get real, in relationships, especially like church dating, right? You want to see how far you can push the agenda of no sex, right? This is a problem a lot of people within the church have, because they're like, okay, no sex, but nobody said anything about this one, right? And then they push the agenda as far as they can possibly push it. But if we're honest, each single time you're like literally playing with fire. It's a matter of seconds that like you're gonna fall. Matter of seconds. So these games are very dangerous. Cut it off. Like cut it off. And I urge you to have this conversation openly with your partner. Openly. Make sure you both are on the same level, on the same like agenda, like on the same like surface. I've seen couples where they've sat down, they've talked about it, and they were successful. Exhibit A. I'm sorry, I had to do it. I was there since like the beginning of their relationship. I apologize to put you guys out there. From the beginning, they sat down, they said, look, we gotta be on the same agenda. Jesus Christ. I apologize. I really tried. They sat down in the beginning of the relationship. It's not even like a year later or whatever. In the beginning of the relationship, before a confession father, and they said, we want to do it this the correct way. We've got to be on it. And they both were on the same level, praying together and making sure that they didn't do anything they didn't want to. And here, they got married the correct way, the right way. They protected themselves. In this generation, here's the epitome of this. Here's another one. Right? And especially them, I was watching it the whole time. It wasn't awkward already. The relationship, I was watching crazy. I told y'all, today was like, we went on a ride, man. Like, it was so you can start
Really telling this man everything. Oh, jeez. I'm sorry. That's not what I was here. But, sorry, I should have put this up. But,
What are you saying?
no, I'm trying to buy time. I'm trying to buy time by mumbling until I put on my laptop. Alright, so today we talked about adultery, and as we always do, I always pick out a verse that's, I guess, somewhat related to the topic we talked about, but like try to touch up on some of the stuff that I feel like it's just so that it's not repetitive to what David said. So the verse we're looking at for today is Ecclesiastes 7:20. Surely there's not a righteous man on earth who does good or never sins. Right? Surely there's not a righteous man on earth who does good and never sins. Right? And I say this because what we talked about is very touchy. People don't like to talk about it. People are uncomfortable when we talk about it. And especially if it's something I feel like most of us struggle with, it's not something you really want to think about, because it kind of makes you realize, okay, I am messing up on this, I am doing this. Like, it's uncomfortable let alone talk about it, for us to even think about. And when it comes to the subject, we're kind of, we should be ashamed of it, right? If this is happening, it's something that we should be ashamed of. But if you look at it, in the day and age we live in, the topic of sex has become very regular, right? It's it's what sells. Like when it comes to TV shows, what do they say? Sex sells, right? The more sex you have in the TV shows, the more ratings, whatever you're gonna get, right? So when it comes to this, I say this because now I feel like it's gotten to a point where it's become normal to a point where what's one thing people do nowadays when they're not in a relationship, but they're just not talking, but they're actually engaging in sex. It's called friends with benefits, right? It's gotten to that point, and I feel like especially this is when we talk about this, as ashamed that we should be, the day and age that we live in, it's kind of telling us, it's okay, it's fine, it's not that big of a deal to do this. And I found it out the hard way because I was LA Fitness. I was playing basketball, bro. I was just trying to play, get some shots up and go about my day. And the guys there, they were talking about oh, what's your body count, right? And to me, before a body count is how many people you've killed. So I was I'm playing with the from comics. I should probably leave. And then people were legit. Sorry, I lost my voice. But people are legit comparing their numbers. They're what's your number? 8. What's your number? 9. I'm I got you to beat by 2, whatever. This is something people actually are proud about nowadays. The more people that you've been with, it's it boosts up, it gives you clout or something, I don't know. And this only works kind of both ways. You know how there's the double standard? It only works for guys. Because for girls, what is it? The more number you have, the more degrading it is, right? But either way, it's bad because the guys they think they're getting good clout out of it because they've been with many women, and the girls they're getting degraded for it because they've been either way you can't win because it's not something you're supposed to do. But I'm just saying we have to separate ourselves when it comes to that thing, and as ashamed as we should be, and the lesson we learned today is this is the time that we've got to wake up, right? This is the time that we gotta just be on top of our spiritual life. Do I want to get into heaven? Are you guys with me? Mm-hmm. So when it comes to that, I chose the verse on purpose, which was, surely there's not a righteous man on earth who does good and never sins. It's not about you never having to do it. We're Christians, we fall. That's the lovely, beautiful thing about Christianity is you're allowed to fall because our flesh cannot help it. Nobody's perfect, like it says. There's not a man who does all good and no sin, right? It's a matter of getting back up. It's a matter of making the conscious effort to not do those things. It's a matter of the last thing that we said, which is labeling all your triggers and thinking about what can I actually do realistically. What can I do to make myself stop from this? It's all the mentality that we have to abide by. And I say this because a lot of people, whether it's adultery or whether it's any other 10 commandments or whether it's any other sin they've committed, they feel like because of what they've done, they can never find the trail back to God. They can never come back to God. They feel like there's the connection they have with God has been cut off, right? And I forgot, one of my students from Sunday class, like the way he described it to me was perfect. Like the connection you have with God, it's never like, think of chains, right? You know how a chain is connected by link by link by link by link, right? So every time you sin, it's not like the chain is cut off, it's just you're adding another link, right? Even though, like, let's say you're holding one end and I'm holding one end. Every time I do something bad to you, right, the link is gonna get longer. We're still holding on to one end of the link, the connection is still there. But each time I do something bad for you, what happens? You get further and further and further away. But eventually, if I will pull all the links in, will you be right here? Right? That's the same thing, the connection that we have with God. It's never cut off. Once we're baptized, we're children of God. God is always with us, and He is never against us, and He will never leave us. It's us that's kind of like, okay, I'm doing this right. Let me add a link. Let me add a link. And we're going further and further and further away from Him. So we have to realize that God is always with us. He's always connected to us. He's always holding on to His end of the chain. All we have to do is find our way back. And to kind of finish it off, a verse with a verse is Romans 5, verse 8 is, but God shows His love for us, and that while we are still sinners, Christ died for us. So even if while we were sinners, we got salvation because Christ died for us. So right now, we're still sinners, correct? So we still have that salvation that Christ died for. So keep that in mind, and when it comes to the topic of adultery, I'm not saying go out there and wild out, but in essence, let's try to make efforts to deal with it in a realistic way. Don't put yourself in a situation where you know you're gonna fail. What's my thing, Xavier?